Thanks for joining us this Thanksgiving. In honor of the holiday, lots of people were trying to give back, including several initiatives serving hot meals to people in need and some high-profile guests as well. Dale Manukduk shows us more.
I don't have anybody. I usually eat myself.
Not the case on Thanksgiving in the Scott Mission Dining Hall, where 550 people packed in throughout the day as tightly as the hot meals being served. While the clients might not be related, the family holiday dynamic is alive and well.
You always meet someone that you used to know a long time. And what you say to the person is, long time no see. So that's great.
Not so great, the growing need Scott Mission is seeing, serving 25% more meals compared to last year and giving out 15% more groceries over the last 3.
All the numbers are going up, and you find the need in our city is so much. People coming into food bank, after they pay their rent and the utilities, they're left with just $6.67 per day for everything else, for travel, for food.
With plenty of people donating their time, the mission is in need of food and monetary donations to meet increased demand. It's the same story at Covenant House, which serves youth who are experiencing homelessness, trafficking, or who are at risk.
We would like not to be doing this work because that would mean there isn't youth homelessness in our city. Unfortunately, that's not the case yet. We're more busy than we have ever been. We serve hundreds of young people each day, and last year extended services to almost 2,500 young people.
Today, those young people got a helping hand from the Toronto Maple Leafs, who donated meals and gifts.
A small thing hopefully can bring a little bit of joy or happiness, even if it's for a small moment.
To be able to use our platform and to be able to bring awareness to the Covenant House, and I think this is the 9th or 10th year that the Leafs have been doing it. So just to hear that the amount of help that they've been able and the support they've been able to provide this place, it's awesome.
Covenant House offers support like transitional housing and job training. Around 500 young people come through the doors every day. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, Premier Doug Ford shared a message on social media today wishing all Ontarians a happy Thanksgiving.
I hope you get the chance to get together with family, friends, and loved ones. Get outside to enjoy our beautiful province and enjoy some turkey and pumpkin pie.
Premier Ford went on to thank all healthcare workers, first responders, and essential workers who are still doing their jobs today. Turning now to the big international story of the day, and Canada has expelled 6 diplomats from India. And in retaliation, India sent 6 Canadian diplomats home. It comes as the RCMP revealed details of investigations into connections between the Indian government and violence in the South Asian community here. CBC's Katie Nicholson reports.
Outside India's Foreign Office, even in the dark, it was clear diplomatic tensions had spilled over.
Canada has provided credible, irrefutable evidence of ties between agents of the government of India and a murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil.
In an extraordinary moment of transparency, the RCMP, usually loath to comment on active investigations, weighed in.
The team has learned a significant amount of information about the breadth and depth of criminal activity orchestrated by agents of the government of India.
And more than a dozen threats of violence leveled at members of the South Asian community.
There is credible evidence that the government of India, through agents in Canada, has been involved in homicides, plural.
One of the homicides in question, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who supported the movement for Khalistan, an independent Sikh state, gunned down in his pickup in Surrey last year. Canada expelled 6 diplomats it says are implicated in criminal activity. India said it told them to come home because they were no longer safe in Canada. In a statement, the government of India said it strongly rejects these preposterous imputations and ascribes them to the political agenda of the Trudeau government that is centered around vote bank politics.
We don't want to be having this fight, but obviously, the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil is not something that we can ignore as a country.
Despite the expulsion of the diplomats, skepticism 6 will be any safer in Canada.
the Indian consulates and embassies, they have their people on the ground. They have people that they work through. So those networks are still intact. So will it have a major impact on the violence facing Sikhs? I have my doubts.
Diplomatic relations with India have already been frosty.
This is going to put them in the icebox.
This former national security advisor to the Prime Minister's office says there's little Canada can do to hold the diplomats accountable.
The bottom line is, in the course of history, this is not rare. During the Cold War, everybody spied against everybody else, and the only thing that we could do is kick people out and be more careful about whom we let back in.
In a little tit for tat, India did some expulsion of its own. It's given 6 Canadian diplomats until the 19th to leave the country. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Turning next to Toronto's Mount Dennis neighborhood, where a group of activists are trying to stop Metrolinks from cutting down trees in a local park. Metrolink says the trees need to come down as part of construction for the Eglinton Crosstown. Greg Ross has the details.
I feel very sad and I feel very angry.
Neil Brassenden is part of the Save the Eglinton Flats Coalition, a group of community organizations that oppose plans by Metrolinks to extend the Crosstown LRT through the Eglinton Flats. They tried fighting Metrolinks in court.
We wanted the courts to put a pause on the removal of these 1,200 trees over this 1.5 kilometer stretch through the Eglinton Flats park system.
They claim that Metrolinks plans to build an elevated track through this green space were in breach of environmental law and racism to some of the marginalized communities in the Mount Dennis neighborhood. But that argument was recently thrown out by a judge.
The judge said it's a serious social and political issue, but argued that it's not a serious legal issue at this time.
In a statement, a spokesperson for Metrolinks told CBC News, to date we have held more than 150 stakeholder meetings in this area to discuss the project, as well as 27 public open houses, 182 community pop-ups, and 142 local canvasses. While members of the Eglinton Flats Coalition acknowledge this, they say that through the court process, they've learned that the consultations didn't happen until after finalizing the project.
Metrolinks is going to come to you and say they did 100, public consultations, pop-ups, open houses. The key thing to note here is that all of that happened after 2020. All of that happened after Metrolinks, on the record before the courts conceded, the decision was made and no changes were going to be contemplated.
That's not surprising to this professor of environmental and urban change at York University.
Under the environmental assessment process such as it exists, they effectively approve their own projects.
He says the government should have more oversight into the way Metrolinks operates.
You usually want some kind of filter somewhere where you have to ask the question in a serious way, do these projects make sense?
Members of the Mount Dennis community say this fight is not over yet.
What we're really asking for is a seat at the table, proper consultation, real consultation, not after the decision has been made. Talk to the community about another option that saves as much of these parks as we possibly can.
Metrolink says this west extension to the Eglinton LRT will add another 9.2 kilometers of service, extending it all the way to Mississauga. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto police confirming today a woman has died after being struck by a school bus in Toronto's East End last week. It happened near Kingswood Road and Kingston Road just around 4 p.m. last Wednesday. A 22-year-old woman was using the crosswalk when the school bus hit her. Paramedics transported the victim to a trauma center with life-threatening injuries, and police confirmed today that she died of her injuries on Saturday. The driver of the school bus remained on the scene and is cooperating with the police investigation. In Ottawa, a burn victim is in life-threatening condition after an early morning incident in the city's downtown. Officers were called about a serious assault investigation that happened just after 6 a.m. The victim was sent to hospital and no other details were released. Police say the circumstances are all under investigation. It's not easy traveling with a disability, especially for people whose conditions are not visible. That's why a Mississauga man on the autism spectrum is advocating for more transportation services to better recognize those who might need extra support. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa reports.
For me, Toad and Yoshi. Yoshi for sure. It was a moment like this, talking about Super Mario characters, that made Aleem Nathu immediately feel comfortable. A few months ago, the 36-year-old was on a Via Rail train back home to Mississauga. He had just spent a few days in Windsor. On board, he met service manager Andre Bergeron-Leckman.
For me, it's just a regular Tuesday, giving my time and attention to our customers as part of what I do every day.
He asked me how I was. He said if there's anything I need, come and speak with him.
It might seem simple, but for Nathu, it was a relief.
I said that I was on the autism spectrum.
Bergeron-Leckman and his staff also helped Nathu figure out how to put away his luggage.
The reason why I think it's very important just to be kind and to make people feel accommodated and welcome is it just makes it easier as well as better for us when it comes to situations that we may not know how to handle.
While Nathu is comfortable saying he has autism, he knows that not everyone with a condition or disability can easily talk about it. It's why he wears this sunflower pin, which is becoming a universal symbol for people with hidden disabilities. The initiative began in the UK about 8 years ago. It's meant to symbolize that the person has a condition that isn't visible, like asthma, diabetes, or hearing loss, so they might need extra help from others. Nathu was wearing his pin the day he met Bergeron-Leckman.
I was not aware of that, so I learned something new through Aleem, and I appreciate that.
There's at least 15 airports in Canada that have adopted the program, and more transit services are also joining the push. In 2023, Metrolink, which runs Go Transit and the Up Express to Pearson Airport in Toronto, implemented the initiative. Via Rail says it will be launching the program in 2026.
For them to be aware of people with hidden disabilities, it makes it more easier for them to communicate and talk to us at the same time. And it's not just bus drivers, it's even citizens and even just regular members of the public too.
Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
Welcome back. The U.S. presidential election will be decided by just a handful of swing states, and polls are showing it's a tight race, prompting an effort to get more people registered to vote, including people who live outside the United States. Philip Lee Shannock reports.
What better boosters for a Get Out the Vote event than American symbols of freedom and duty? Along with a selfie, eligible Americans can get an absentee ballot.
If I bring it back here, they'll do it all for me, so it kind of makes voting abroad so much easier.
Of the estimated 2 million U.S. citizens living abroad, there's more than 600,000 eligible voters in Canada.
Only about 3% of them actually voted in the last election.
In the U.S., there's no national agency responsible for elections.
They're confused by the process because every state has different deadlines and different addresses in order to register to vote.
Ballots accepted here are kept in a locked room until the U.S. Postal Service can deliver them to the voters' home states. And while former President Donald Trump has claimed absentee ballots are prone to fraud, there's no evidence of that.
I feel very comfortable knowing that my ballot is secure.
Georgianne Burke is voting Republican in her home state of Florida, but she knows Americans living in Canada tend to skew Democrat.
That's no surprise to me. The environment here is not particularly friendly to Republicans.
And Democrats abroad is pushing for Americans here to vote.
This is the most critical election in the history of the United States.
Especially in swing states where the margins are so tight. Absentee ballots like this could play a big role in those close races, but the vote from overseas isn't a guaranteed lock for either party.
People who kind of look at this as saying, well, this is going to be, a huge benefit for the Democrats. It's hard to see that. A lot of the overseas voters are military.
Still, Republicans are already on the offensive, filing lawsuits in several swing states challenging absentee ballots for potential fraud before they're even counted. Philip Lee Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, in the battleground state of Florida, voters aren't just looking to elect the next president. They're also deciding whether to expand access to abortion. Katie Simpson looks at the battle over Florida's 6-week abortion ban, one of the most restrictive in the United States.
In this artsy, hip neighborhood in Miami, this is where reproductive rights activists do their thing. They hand out flyers, they talk to people who are out shopping to try to make the case in favor of expanding access to abortion. Voters this fall will be asked not only to vote in the presidential election, but also whether in the state of Florida, abortion should become a constitutional right. And that would dramatically change how health care is delivered in Florida. Why did you get involved?
How can I not get involved? This is one of the most important matters of our lifetime. And Florida is a battleground state. In regards to this issue, absolutely. We're seeing a united front and a double down on the campaign, and for people fighting for their basic human rights, which is for politicians to stay out of their medical examinations.
Florida has some of the toughest abortion regulations in the country. Right now, there's a 6-week ban in place, and many women don't even know that they're pregnant by 6 weeks in. Now, there are some exceptions to the ban. However, doctors tell us they're confusing, and it's led to a climate of fear within the medical community. That is why so many doctors are getting involved in the fight to expand access to abortion. On the other side of that argument is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, a Republican. He's teaming up with religious leaders in Florida to try to push back to keep that 6-week ban in place. What do you say when you hear the Yes people argue that they don't want the government to have anything to do with what they see as a medical decision?
One of my fundamental beliefs is that I believe that somebody has to be watching out also for the rights of that child.
The side fighting to keep the 6-week ban in place, it has an advantage. Even though expanding access to abortion and protecting those rights is very popular politically in the United States, in order for this amendment to pass, it needs 60% of the vote. Millions of dollars have been poured into this fight on both sides as reproductive rights hang in the balance. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Miami, Florida.
The final Nobel Prize of the year was awarded, recognizing achievements in economics.
This year's laureates have pioneered new approaches, both empirical and theoretical, that have significantly advanced our understanding of global inequality.
The prize was awarded to 3 Americans for their work examining prosperity differences among countries. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You might have noticed the fall leaves are looking a little bit muted so far this year. Experts say warmer weather is delaying the peak of the season, and Brittany Billette has more.
The season may have changed, but most trees seem to be stuck in summer. Here at Toronto's High Park, people say they've noticed it too.
Feels like we get 6 months of winter and then 5 months of summer and then a whisper of this.
Our family drove up north yesterday to see, the fall leaves changing color, and we're expecting more trees to be bright orange, bright reds, but it was just starting to turn those colors, and that's not what we experienced in the past years, and we thought it was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, it does change from year to year, but I think this year is not a good year. Climate change is concerning for me, yes.
Experts have also observed the seas of green and say warmer than normal conditions in September and October is mostly to blame.
I think we have seen the color change seasons come a little later nowadays than it used to be 30 years ago. And certainly often we would say on Thanksgiving, well, this is the peak of the season.
But that's not the case this year. Scientists say fall's typical sunny but cold conditions trigger leaves to change their colors, and the frost we usually see this time of year hasn't yet made an appearance.
We often have really, really spectacular falls, so this is unusual.
She says those warmer than normal temperatures in Ontario means leaves are able to retain their summer metabolism and thus their green color. So what does that mean for autumn this year?
We might get a kind of longer, duller fall than we would have expected as things start to change more slowly.
If you're hoping to take in those fall colors, don't worry, there's still time. Experts say recent cold snaps could change the color of the leaves before the end of the season. Brittany Blatt, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, let's get Colette into the conversation now. And Colette, happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving, Chris.
Lots to be thankful for when we look at the weather, hey?
Yes, exactly. I mean, it has been a balmy start to the fall season, no doubt about it. But I think we've reached that point in the journey where we take that left turn into some of the cooler air. That has definitely arrived. And again, tonight we're looking at some frost advisories. You see many areas along the St. Lawrence, the northern shore of Lake Ontario, passing around around the GTA and along the north shore of Lake Erie as well. And keeping in mind, we may have patchy frost outside of those advisory areas as well, but this is kind of your heads up. Now's your chance. If you have some vegetation you can still wrap or protect, you may want to do that. So, okay, what's going on here with our big picture and the pattern change we've been seeing? Well, the place to be today for Thanksgiving may have been southern Alberta, where temperatures have been about 10 degrees above seasonal, and that's with this big ridge in place. But we're into a trough in the east, and with that, that cold air moves in. Clockwise circulation around high pressure, a low to the east, and counterclockwise. And what does that do? That drives that cooler air in from the north. And as that is coming in from the north, it's coming across the relatively warmer waters of the lakes. So yes, we get into what are mostly some lake effect showers. We have some of those tonight into tomorrow as well. But I say mostly because some of that cooler air, especially with the cooler temperatures overnight into the morning hours, may do a little bit of mixing, especially around, say, Mount Forest, Orangeville, some of the higher elevations, some of those regions, but not out of the question into the Ottawa Valley as well. And the slimmest chance you could see even a flurry tomorrow morning in southwestern Ontario, but that is definitely slimmer. The good news here is that we'll break out of this pattern, at least in terms of the sky conditions, as we get into Wednesday. That'll kind of be the changeover. That ridge will build in. We'll get sunshine coming back, and by the end of the week, temperatures going in the other direction is starting to warm up once again. But for overnight tonight, this is what you're looking at for those overnight lows. And yes, that slight chance for some mixing in here. The winds are a little lighter overnight, but they're going to be ramping back up tomorrow. And on the cooler side, Toronto, your high just 9 degrees. We'll pick it up a little bit each day, and looking so much better by the time we get to Friday and into next weekend. Check out Wednesday night, though. That will likely be the coolest night that we'll be seeing. In fact, for Windsor, dipping down close to the freezing mark for Wednesday night. But tomorrow, it's a high of 10 degrees with that chillier feel to things. Same thing, though, a little improvement. Baby steps, right? Each day it gets a little bit warmer. 8 for your high in the nation's capital, by the way, joining us this evening. Welcome. 11 degrees on Wednesday, and some upper teens there as well to end off the week and into that weekend, Chris.
Just one more thing to look forward to for next weekend. Thank you, Colette.
You got it.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching.